travelers, and welcome to Go See, Do, Explore.
Here, we dive deep into the heart of travel, sharing hidden gems, unforgettable experiences, and the stories that make each destination unique.
Whether you're a seasoned traveler or dreaming of your next getaway, you're in the right place to get inspired.
I'm Christopher.
And I'm Ashleigh.
And together, we'll set the course for your next great adventure and discover the stories that make each place unforgettable.
It's time to go, see, and do more. Let's explore. Hello. We are recently back from a trip to Italy. Over the next several episodes, we're going to be detailing the trip and the places that we went. So at the beginning of this episode, I kind of wanted to give those of you listening an idea of what is to come.
Yes.
On this podcast. So the trip in total was about 2.5 weeks. There will be information about our crazy flights at the end of the episode today. But we flew to Catania, which is the second largest city in Sicily, and we began our journey there. We spent, I think, about 5 days in Sicily, in the eastern part of Sicily. And then we went up to Naples. We spent 2 nights in Naples. We went to Florence. I think we had 4 nights in Florence. And then 2 nights in Bologna and 3 nights in Venice. So we kind of snaked from the southernmost part of Italy up to the north.
Yeah, it was nice to be there for a few weeks and looking forward to sharing all of the different experiences that we had.
It's definitely more than we can talk about in one episode. So we kind of wanted to give a preview in this one, and then we'll kind of dive more into the different locations in subsequent episodes. Since we've been back, probably one of the biggest questions we've got from people talking about this trip is, how did you get around in Italy? Did you rent a car? And so we did rent a car in Sicily, and we'll talk about that on the next episode when we talk about Sicily. But for the transportation from city to city, we took the train.
Yeah. The train's really convenient. It goes city center to city center typically, and it's really easy to book tickets and relatively inexpensive.
If you're doing any sort of hopping from major city to major city in Europe, trains tend to be a good way to do it.
Yeah, at least that's been our experience now in Portugal, Spain, and Italy.
Like I mentioned, we did drive. We rented a car for a little bit, and I think the driver here would agree with the statement that I'm glad we didn't do it for the whole trip.
Yeah, although it seemed like Sicily was more intense than a lot of other parts of Italy. But yeah, if you want to test your driving patience, definitely drive in Sicily.
The streets are very narrow. They're very old cities. They were not built with modern automobiles in mind. If you are planning on spending time in Europe outside of the cities, going into the country, that's where a car is going to be more handy. But since our trip was almost entirely city, we thought trains were a better option. So when you're looking to book trains in Italy, the main company is called Trenitalia, and their website is trenitalia.it. And at first glance, even translating the website into English, it is very intimidating. And we watched a few videos and we read some things about booking trains in Italy before this trip. And a lot of the Americans that travel to Italy use third parties to book train trips. But the more we looked at it, we were able to save a little money by booking directly through Trenitalia. So Chris did all the bookings. So why don't I let you kind of explain the booking process?
Yeah, and I didn't find it actually to be that difficult. The one that was kind of challenging that we'll talk about in a minute was the night train, just because the options I think were a little bit more challenging to understand. But the other trains, I didn't have any problem with the translated version of the website. I thought it was pretty easy to understand.
The first thing you have to realize when you're using this Trenitalia website is you need to know the names of the cities in Italian.
Yeah.
If you search for Florence, it's not going to come
Actually, though, when it was translated into English, I think it did come up.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't really have any issues.
I guess it was easier to use the website than the app for that purpose.
Maybe that was it. But the number one tip I would give overall when you're looking at Trenitalia is to understand that the class of fare is one thing, and then there's also this other dimension to your booking, which is sort of how refundable and how cancelable it is. And that's kind of confusing because they call it, at least the English translation, they call that economy or base, or there might be a couple others too, like, which refers to basically whether you can get a refund or not. But like, you can book a business class ticket with this economy, and that just means that you won't be refunded for it. That there's like two dimensions to the booking.
Right. Once you figure that out, Trenitalia makes a lot more sense. Because when you first go to the website and it's like class of fare and there's like 25 different options, I'm like, what am I looking at here?
Right. Well, and that was especially true with the night train, which that was our first train that we took. We took the Intercity Notte, is what they call it, and we took it overnight from Catania to Naples. And that was where we were running into things not translating. Like, it has basically your different options are, there's like a coach class, and then there are a couple different sleeper classes. There's one where you're just in a cabin with strangers. Which was the one we really didn't want. There's one where for women that you can be in a cabin of women only. And then there's one where you can be in your own cabin, and then there's like a luxury one too, right? So there are these 4 different sleeper classes, and those didn't translate, and so it was like Vagone Entero or something like that was the one that we booked. But like, it just, there's not a lot of like reassurance that you're booking the right thing.
Right.
And the stakes are pretty high, right? Like, you don't want to show up and find out you're in a in a cabin with some people you don't know. I mean, maybe you do, but we didn't.
And we should mention that our cabin could sleep 3, unlike the smallest Amtrak option. It was like 3 bunk beds. And the one at the top was like really high up there.
Yeah, you can find videos of this online if you're curious what it looks like. But yeah, it's sort of different. Like, there are 2 beds in the main part, and then there's the sort of upper part that you have to go up on a ladder to get up to. And that's got luggage storage, and it has a 3rd bed. So we just use it for luggage storage, of course. The other thing I'll say about booking in general was, for all of the day trains, we booked business class. And we did that. First of all, it was a nice experience, but it really wasn't that much more than the class below, which I think is the premium class, which is what people recommend that you book if you've got luggage. The basic, or basic is the wrong word, but like that, whatever that coach type class is, there's not a lot of storage space. So if you've got suitcases, which we had relatively small suitcases, we can talk about that. People recommend you book at least premium. And it like wasn't much more money just to get to business. So I did that because it was nice. And I wish that Amtrak were that way. I feel like Amtrak, it's like business is 3 times as much as coach class. It was not that way.
Well, there's only on most Amtrak cars,
the
or
cafe.
most Amtrak trains, the business car shares the car with the cafe car. And then there's like,
at least
then there's
Amtrak.
like 4 coach cars. So it's going to be significantly more.
At least on Amtrak Midwest. But. So the night train was the first one we took, as I mentioned, and we described the cabin already, but for the room, couple of bunks, little table, decent window. There was a sink, small sink, which was nice to be able to brush teeth and things like that. It was a tight fit, definitely, but it was definitely bigger than the roomette on Amtrak. Like, it was probably similar to an Amtrak bedroom. We didn't do that, but it was probably
felt
similar.
like double the space of Amtrak. Well, I guess it kind of was, because it was the same as the bedroom where there was only the walkway.
Right. The walkway is on one side of the train, so then like the rest of that bit of train is bedroom. It was really fun, especially that route going from Sicily to the mainland of Italy or vice versa. It's famous for this. The whole train actually goes on a ferry, which is pretty cool. So you get to Messina, if you're going the direction we went, you get to Messina, and they basically break up the train and put it onto this railroad ferry and boat you across to mainland Italy, and then like hook the train back up, and then you keep going, which was kind of cool.
It was very strange because that happened pretty late at night.
Yeah.
So going from, the train feeling to a boat feeling and then back to a train feeling was strange.
All of a sudden you're on the water. And you can, at that point too, you can get out and walk around in the ferry and stuff if you want. It was the middle of the night, so we didn't. We just stayed in our room.
But they do run that route during the day.
I think in the other direction, if you go from Rome, you'll hit that during the day. Like, you'll sleep overnight and you get there the next morning. And so you could actually do that during the day if you're going south. The beds were pretty bad. I was surprised by this. I mean, I wasn't expecting like a luxury experience, but that was not a good mattress.
It was more firm than Amtrak for sure.
Yeah, I was quite sore the next day. And I don't like to complain about that stuff. Like I like to be able to sleep everywhere and all, but it was actually pretty bad.
I'm a notoriously bad sleeper, and I barely slept that night. So yeah, it wasn't great. I also didn't sleep well on Amtrak.
It was still really fun though. I enjoyed it a lot.
When we got on the train, our steward gave us a little breakfast menu for us to select what we wanted for breakfast. Italian breakfast is not an English breakfast or an American breakfast. It's a lot lighter. You get typically, espresso and a pastry. So, but there, we got quite a few little pastry things.
We got some Ritz minis.
Some Ritz minis that we carried around for a long time until they were pretty much dust. But train cappuccino wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
This train runs from Palermo, Sicily to Rome, and we took it from Catania to Naples. So it wasn't a ton of time that we were on the train. The train was a little behind. I think it was like 10 minutes delayed. And so I think we got on around 11.
Yeah, 11 p.m. or so. And then we got off
at like 7:15, something like that. With your breakfast, you also get an Italian language newspaper.
Yeah. Trenitalia is big on offering you newspapers, I guess.
Yes. Apparently newspapers are still a thing in Italy anyway.
Yeah. But it was a good experience overall. I mean, I would do it again, although I would think about how I could maybe pad that mattress a little bit or something.
Like an inflatable air mattress in your backpack or something.
Surely this exists. Showers would have been nice, I guess. Did you say the luxury class you get a shower?
The Excelsior cabin does have a shower in it.
I wonder how much more that would have been.
Yeah, because like we said, this train was late. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And we had a lot of time to kill in Catania. And so we were just kind of walking around, and we had to get the luggage storage place before it closed. And so we were like hustling back there.
And it was hot.
And we were sweaty. And then we had to get on this train, and we couldn't do anything about it. That was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think there weren't any other train experiences where that was a problem.
No.
So I think it was just kind of the nature of the time of our train.
Yeah, for sure. So as far as the other trains we took one from Naples to Florence. We took one from Florence to Bologna and from Bologna to Venice. All three, the high-speed Trenitalia trains, Frecciarossa, all three business class, really good experiences. We had a couple of different seating configurations. There's the one where we sat sort of facing each other with a table in between and no one next to us. That was all right, although like we were kind of like bumping knees a little bit, but not bad. And then we sat next to each other one time in more of like an airline style, kind of like the seats in front of us were also facing in the same direction that we were. And then the train to Venice, we sat in these single seats that were on opposite sides of the aisle because that was the best thing I could get us. But the chairs are really comfortable. They recline really well, and especially in a way that doesn't seem to impact the person behind you, so you can recline and not feel guilty about it. They come around with like a trolley service in business class, and they give you can get coffee, which is like espresso strength coffee in an air pot. So I don't know what they're doing to produce that, but they coffee, they have tea, they have some juices and sodas. And then they give you this overpackaged box every time. It's like this big red box that has in it like a wet wipe. It has a couple of cookies in it. And what's the other thing? There's one more thing in there.
Well, there was the card to tell you how they recycle the box.
The card to tell you they recycle the box, right? They give you an extra piece of cardboard to tell you that they're recycling all this cardboard. The cookies were not the best food we had in Italy. Like they're fine. It's not gross, but it was kind of weird. And it doesn't matter the time of day. It seems like whether you're on, and it's kind of a breakfasty item, but we were definitely on in the early afternoon too, and we got the same cookies. So it's a nice touch. I'm not complaining about it, but don't get super excited that the food you have in business class is going to be awesome because it's just a couple little cookies. There is they call it a bistro car, like a cafe car in the US. We didn't go to it though.
No, we were never really on the train that long.
But it was a good way to get around. I mean, like I said, one of the best things about the train versus flying is that you just go city center to city center. And it's really easy overall. Like most of the stations, there wasn't much to them. Bologna's got a whole situation of like multiple levels you have to navigate, but Naples, Florence, Venice, all these train stations were really easy to get through, and yeah, not a problem at all.
And we should mention premium class and above have the best options if you're traveling with luggage. I urge you to go back a few episodes and listen to our episode about traveling with a carry-on only, because there was not a lot of room on this train for large suitcases. And we saw some people shoving suitcases in places that size suitcase had no business being. Like there was one that was shoved in between these seats, and I swear it made a cracking sound.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was convinced when they were going to pull it out, like it was just everything was going to fall out.
This was actually really shocking on the train and just kind of in general. Our experience last year in Portugal and Spain was that if anything, our suitcases were kind of big, and we have these, carry-on suitcases that are not very big.
Right, the standard American carry-on size.
Right, a little bit bigger than the European carry-on, but not very big. And in Italy, I felt like everywhere we saw mostly tourists with just giant suitcases.
Some of the largest suitcases I had ever seen.
Yeah.
Like I swear, even in an American airport, you didn't see suitcases that big. I don't know where they purchased them.
And so I was like, I guess I'm wrong about this because people are doing this all the time, but I wouldn't do it.
No, because not only is it hard to find space on the train, but then you have to carry that, lug it on the cobblestone streets, try to shove it in, over your head on the train.
Right. Yeah, like in Florence, for example, the easiest way to get from the train station to our Airbnb was a 20-minute walk. That was the easiest thing to do. There was no public transit that was better than that. The taxi situation was not particularly good for that because Florence in general is fairly walkable, and so the taxis don't really work in that way. I mean, you could get a taxi probably, but it would take you just as long to get over there. And so, yeah, I mean, being able to walk 20 minutes in a city with your suitcase is a totally reasonable and normal thing on a trip like this, and I just can't imagine.
No, there were some people that had multiple large suitcases. Plainly, there wasn't room on the train for all of that luggage.
No.
So that was our experience traveling Italy by train.
Yes.
I think it's time for a wine break.
Let's take a wine break. We're here for the wine break, and today we have a Michigan wine. Don't worry, we'll get to the Italian wines. We have plenty now. But yeah, we're in Michigan today with a dry Riesling from Chateau Grand Traverse. This is a 2021 dry Riesling. I wanted to talk a little bit about Riesling production in the US and in Michigan. Now, you've probably heard of Riesling. You probably know it as a sweet wine from Western Germany, from like Alsace, the area around Strasbourg, in Germany and France. It's probably the most famous growing region for Riesling. And there have been sweet Rieslings over the years that have dominated the mass market, like Blue Nun, maybe most famously. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Riesling in Michigan because it can be different from that. A lot of times I mention Riesling as a big Michigan grape and people just sort of dismiss it as sweet, but this is a dry Riesling. And Michigan grows Riesling really well. The climate is similar to the places in Europe where it grows. And certainly there's a lot of sweet Riesling here. But it's always nice to see different expressions of a grape from winemakers. And a lot of the winemakers in Michigan have chosen to make dry and semi-dry Rieslings too. What do we think of this wine? What's it like? It's very fruity. I mean, you might get a dry Riesling. You might say, this isn't dry, it's sweet. But it's not sweet. There's a lot of fruit flavor, and sometimes that's confused in the palate. But there's not a lot of residual sugar in here. I taste honey. I don't know, what do you taste? Wine?
Tastes like grapes.
Grapes. It has the characteristic Riesling, like very... Honestly, for me, this flavor is very grapey, if that makes sense, but...
It's got a little floral to it.
It's floral. Yeah. And so I have to admit, Riesling is not one of my top favorite wines that I love, and maybe it's because I've had so much of it living in Michigan where we grow a lot of it. But what I do really love it for is like hot summer day or whenever we have family get-togethers, and so we'll be opening multiple bottles of wine because there are enough people, very often the first bottle I open is a Riesling because it's a good one to have like with some cheese or like just kind of when you're getting things started. Chateau Grand Traverse really is a Michigan wine pioneer and a cool climate North American wine pioneer. In the 70s, Ed O'Keefe Jr. just started experimenting with growing vinifera on Old Mission Peninsula north of Traverse City. We've talked about Traverse City a fair amount on this podcast and wines from up there. But this is really where the vinifera production started. Prior to that, there had been the growth of North American grapes and hybrid grapes in that area and some wine production there. Maybe Mauby most notably, which I believe we've talked about Mauby on this podcast.
More than once.
Yeah, maybe more than once. But Chateau Grand Traverse was really the first place to prove that this could be done in Michigan, much in the same way that Constantine Frank, who I'm sure we'll talk about on another podcast, did this in New York State, in Finger Lakes region. And so the success of Michigan as a wine region is due, at least in part, to the efforts that Chateau Grand Traverse has made. And one of the things I really love about them is that they have a wide range of offerings and a wide range of price points. There's something there for pretty much everyone. And where a lot of other very good wineries have become, I think, much more sort of exclusive and maybe expensive, although it's all relative. Chateau Grand Traverse is one that I think has broad appeal, and it's a good one to visit if you're visiting that part of Michigan.
They just celebrated 50 years a few years ago.
That's right. The bottle says aromas of lemon and fresh melon, but yeah, it's a nice wine.
Chateau Grand Traverse is known for its Riesling.
Mm-hmm.
They are very proud of their Riesling.
Yes.
And I think this is one that you could probably even pick up in grocery stores in Michigan. It's pretty common.
Definitely, and not very expensive. So yeah, 2021 dry Riesling from Chateau Grand Traverse.
So we're back, and now we are talking about our flights.
My favorite topic.
So we alluded in the last episode that we did this trip to Italy on budget airlines. So we started off, we flew from Detroit to New York on Spirit. Yay. From New York, we flew to Paris on Norse Atlantic, and we had bid for an upgrade from economy to premium on Norse, and that was, we'll kind of get into the details in a minute here, but that was at the time one of the most luxurious, most comfortable flight experiences of my life. Then we had a lengthy layover in Paris, which we're actually going to talk about after this, and then we flew from Paris to Catania on EasyJet. In the other direction, going home, we flew Venice to Paris, Orly, on EasyJet. And we flew Orly to Newark on French B. And then we flew from Newark home on United, which is the only really of the legacy carriers that we flew in this crazy elaborate scheme to save a few dollars and fly a little bit more comfortably.
Yeah, I was doing the comparison after, and did we save money? I think we did, but more than that, we got some really interesting experiences.
That's true. I didn't talk about, so we had booked premium on French B, but because they used a different plane, I think, than we had originally booked on, it was an Air Caribes, I think is how you say that plane, which had lie flat business seats, and somehow we got upgraded to lie flat business seats, and I don't think I can ever fly an economy ever again.
Yeah, you might.
Chris needs to get his wallet out.
You might have to sometime. But the thing that sort of originated this idea is that flights between New York and various European cities tend to be a lot cheaper than flights from Detroit. Also, flights from Detroit to New York and vice versa, that tends to be a pretty inexpensive flight. Not always, but usually you can find an inexpensive flight. So it becomes this question of, okay, could we basically find a really inexpensive transatlantic from New York to some European city and then kind of work out the rest? And that was what we did. And this one came up when I was flight searching, especially the one that was Detroit to Catania came up, and it said 35 hours or whatever, and like, yeah, like who's gonna do that? But then I looked at it and I realized that actually this is a pretty good option because it got us into Paris around noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that, and allowed us to spend half a day in Paris, spend the night in Paris, and then we just flew, the next day.
The very first flight the next day. Somehow we got lucky to be the very first flight out of CGD the next morning.
Yes. To Sicily. And so that was sort of a nice thing, right? That it was a long enough layover that we could actually make it part of our vacation. There would be maybe some timing issues there if it wasn't that way. That wouldn't have been a good option. But it allowed us to book Norse Atlantic, which was one we were curious about. I think that flight for 2 people, the original fare was something like $400 only for 2 people to cross the Atlantic. So you can imagine then how those savings would cascade. We booked some extras. I think I paid for some meals and some seats, unfortunately, because I also then bid on the upgrade and got the upgrade. I think for 2 people, that was about $350. So altogether, less than $1,000 for 2 people to cross the Atlantic in, recliner premium economy seats with premium economy service, 2 meals, and all that. Pretty good. Now, had to spend a couple $100 after paying for bags to get to New York, and then had to spend, I think, about $200 to get from Paris to Catania. Had to spend about $200 on a hotel room in Paris. So, in that direction, probably all told, we were maybe $1,200-$1,300 for 2 people. If you compare that to a direct fare in economy, I mean, you're going to pay probably $1,000 a person. No, more than that to go Detroit to Catania certainly would be.
I don't know that that's even a direct flight that exists.
Right, you would fly Detroit to Rome and then connect probably. So, I mean, I think still in that direction, we saved money, like a lot of money probably, and got a really good experience. It just takes more time.
Right. And I mentioned earlier in this episode that I am one that notoriously does not sleep well, especially outside of a bed. So I've never really gotten a good sleep on an airplane. I slept like a baby on that flight. It didn't hurt that it was a red-eye flight, so we boarded at like 11:30 or something like that. So I was tired. But then the ability to actually lay your seat down, cover up with a blanket, put on an eye mask after, a little meal and some wine was great.
Yeah. The return was more expensive. The flight from Venice to Orly was on EasyJet was kind of expensive. I don't remember exactly how much, but it was maybe with bags, because we had to pay for bags on EasyJet, maybe $300. It was a little bit more than the other direction. And then we had booked premium on French B from the beginning, unlike with Norse where we upgraded. We decided that we were going to do premium in one direction, and that was the direction we chose. So we booked French B. I think for 2 people, that was around $1,100. Again, a really good price, actually, if you think about it. Like, that direct flight to Detroit on a more typical carrier would be a lot more than that, and you'd be in economy. But still, definitely more expensive in that direction. And then we booked United coming back for a couple of reasons. One, because it was out of Newark, which made it easier. We didn't have to transfer airports in New York, which is a hassle. Spirit, for whatever reason, those flights that day, the carry-on was like $75 a person, which is much more than it normally is. I don't know why. I can't explain that. I still haven't been able to figure out why that is. So in that direction, it was probably more like $1,700 to come back. We also had to get a hotel room in that direction too. Yeah, so maybe it was more than that. But still a pretty good value if you consider like what a direct flight would cost. You're losing your time there, but I slept on that plane so well because it was a lay flat seat. So
it was very nice. I would like to do a little comparison between these 2 budget transatlantic flights that we had. So Norse has kind of a bad reputation.
I'd say mixed, at least, yeah.
When we boarded the plane, they did offer us a pre-boarding beverage. I thought this was kind of funny. Mm-hmm. Your choices are water or orange juice. I mentioned this was 11 o'clock at night. I don't typically drink orange juice and then go to sleep.
Yeah.
I feel like that might upset my stomach. So that was kind of weird. I went with the water. And then they served the food, which was fine. In premium, they served us 2 meals. There wasn't any choice, I don't think. It was, this is the food that we're giving you.
Yeah.
Here you go. Take it or don't. It was chicken with pesto and like burrata. And there were some other things. There was a roll.
Yeah. Bunch of stuff on the tray.
Was there yogurt or was that the morning?
I think that was the morning.
It wasn't anything to write home about. Weirdly, the glasses that they served the drinks in were plastic. Everything was disposable. And the silverware was wood. That's one of the things they've been kind of marked down on the internet for. Like, it's this premium experience, but they're giving you disposable.
Yeah. It's fine, but yeah.
Yeah. And then in the morning, they gave us a weird kind of egg square thing.
Yeah, it was like a gelatinous egg dish.
It was hot, where the chicken pesto thing was cold. Once again, served with wood cutlery. Mm-hmm. There was coffee and yogurt and I think some pastry maybe. Like it was okay. We were about to get off the plane and it was like lunchtime at that point, so it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't a huge deal. But like I said, at that point, that was the best I'd ever slept on an airplane. It was overnight and then we arrived in Paris in the afternoon. And I honestly think that this is a great way to do a transatlantic crossing because I didn't sleep a full night's worth of sleep. But then we only had a short day before you could sleep again and kind of catch up. And if we hadn't had the world's earliest flight from Paris, maybe could have actually gotten a reasonable amount of sleep and then, not passed out once we got to Sicily. But that's for the next episode. With Norse, we were trying to look up the configuration of the plane, and it was not clear. Everything we were seeing was a different plane than we ended up flying on. We ended up on, well, you could talk about the plane.
Yeah, it's the 787 Dreamliner, which is a really cool plane with like the windows that have like, there are no shades. It just dims the glass. And,
it was crazy. And I thought it was really interesting that when we were landing, they were able to just undim all the shades.
Yeah.
It was very technologically advanced.
This is a cool plane. It's a plane I've wanted to fly on for a while, and I wasn't expecting to fly on it on that trip. I got really excited when I found out.
So it was interesting that it wasn't the plane that we saw in any of the like seating maps online. So I don't know if they've just acquired these planes or what the deal is there. Mm-hmm. But the bathroom was pretty nice for the premium cabin. Yeah. So that was the Dreamliner on Norse. And then on French B, which you said was a little bit more expensive, right? And especially the lay flat business is not what we booked.
Yeah, I don't know that it was more expensive than what Norse was charging. It was just more expensive than what we paid on Norse because we did the bid.
So then with French B, or Air Caribes, that was an Airbus?
Yeah, A350, which is like a pretty typical wide body plane. The seating configuration in premium was lay flat and was it like
222?
It was 222, yeah, right. So everyone is on an aisle or a window. Yeah.
I mean, not that you really need the leg room in the lie flat situation because there was plenty of leg room. But so we boarded at like 8 p.m. They immediately, after sitting down, they handed us champagne in a glass. And then the meal...
it was a curry. It was a chicken curry.
We had 2 choices, chicken or fish, which fish on an airplane seems like an odd choice. But then they served it with French cheeses and roll. Was there some fruit? There was a single grape.
1 grape.
After that, you tried to do some working, and we had trouble with the Wi-Fi being anything usable on French B, where Norse didn't have Wi-Fi at all. Right. So honestly, in that way, they are very equitable. We slept for a little bit, and then we woke up right as they were passing out the snack, and I was very confused, and we just kind of missed the opportunity to try the snack.
Yeah.
But so we can't report back on the snack. Both airlines offered refills on our wine. French B, the drinks were served in glass with washable metal silverware. It had a little bit more of a high-end feel to it, but we were also in lie flat seats, which has a higher-end feel to it.
And the flight attendants wear denim shirts.
Oh, yeah. Overall, I think both airlines are a great option to have a kind of more luxurious experience with the smaller price tag than you would get for premium economy in the traditional legacy carriers. But I do feel like the French B experience was a little bit more high-end feeling.
Yeah.
We didn't book the lay flat seats, so I have no idea how much that would actually cost.
Well, they don't have them typically
Right.
on their normal planes.
Yeah, so we just somehow got lucky on a Caribbean plane. But they both have the screen-based entertainment system. We played Uno together for a while before the flight took off. Lots of movie options, especially if you speak French. Yeah, I can't really speak to what was available on Norse because we didn't even pull the screens out. They were in our armrest. Is there anything you want to say about the comparison between those two airlines?
No, I mean, we can really only speak for the premium side, and I don't know how the economy is, but definitely would fly them again, either one.
We didn't even see the economy on French B. They were very hidden from us. And especially because that flight wasn't supposed to have that fancy business class. It was very empty. They obviously didn't upgrade all of the seats.
Yeah.
So EasyJet is where we took the regional European flights. It is a British airline, which I feel like might be a step up from Ryanair, if you've ever heard of Ryanair and its notorious kind of Spirit frontier-ness to the like how they will even weigh your carry-on bags. They'll size them, they'll weigh them. I'm surprised they don't make people get on a scale.
You're right.
Honestly, out of all the flights we had, I think I may have disliked our EasyJet flights the most, although that Spirit flight wasn't great either. Just legroom-wise. The seats are a little bit more padded than Spirit. I equated Spirit's regular seats to the metal folding chair you pull out of the church basement. And EasyJet is like the padded folding chair that you have lying around somewhere. So it's not a super comfortable experience. It's a little cramped.
No. I think also it was often accompanied by a bus gate, which, you know, if you've done bus gates, it's not fun.
Yeah, 3 of our 4 gates on EasyJet were bus gates. Although the Catania one, it wasn't a bus. It was we just let you off at the door.
That was fine.
Yeah, we don't like bus gates. EasyJet was the most inexpensive way to get where we were going. It wasn't something I would seek out in the future.
No. But I bet we'll end up on them again.
I'm doing lie flat seats for life. # lie flat for life.
Yeah.
So that was our experience getting to and getting around Europe on low-cost air carriers. For the final segment of this episode, we want to talk a little bit about the very beginning of our trip after, I guess, our few hours in New York. And that was with our layover in Paris. So when I was in high school, I got to do a European exchange program where we went from city to city to city. We flew into Paris, we got on a bus, and they whisked us out of there. So technically my feet had been in Paris, but I had never seen anything but the airport. So I was really excited to just kind of get to see Paris. Chris was lucky enough that he got to spend some time in Paris when he was in high school. So he kind of came up with a little itinerary for us. We didn't really do anything. That's one of the reasons why this is going to be so short. We just kind of took the subway and we walked like 25,000 steps in an afternoon and kind of saw the sights of Paris. And it was interesting, especially as my first visit to Paris. And I think as your second, you kind of see a little bit of the difference. Since they were preparing for the Olympics, Paris was interesting.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed. I mean, it was still great to be in Paris, don't get me wrong. But, you know, the Eiffel Tower and the gardens that are around it, most of it was closed off. You couldn't really go into the gardens because I think all of these places are going to be venues for things. And so there, you know, we went to the Eiffel Tower, which was cool. I mean, as always, but like it was kind of like, all right, you see it and you keep moving.
Yeah, we didn't go up the Eiffel Tower. We just kind of stopped, got the photo op, and then kept walking.
We walked to the Arc de Triomphe. That was good.
Yeah,
there was not really like any obstruction or obstacle there. We were able to spend some time there. There was some sort of like a military ceremony going on with a band and stuff. It was like these 2 dudes walked from one spot to another spot and then had a conversation with someone else, and then they all 3 walked back. It was kind of, I don't know what that was. We really want to know what it was.
We Googled it after the fact, like even days after the fact, and all I could find was about Biden's visit to Paris in remembrance of D-Day, but that was several days. It was like 2 days before. So there was nothing on the internet about what we witnessed the day that we witnessed it.
Yeah, but that was kind of cool. And then we walked down the Champs-Élysées, which is an experience with all the stores and the bistros and all that, into the Tuileries. And the Tuileries are one of my favorite things in Paris, and we got to walk a little bit through there. But again, a lot of it was kind of closed or obstructed because of the Olympics. You know, the Place de Concorde there with the obelisk and all that was completely closed off because
it was like bleachers all around
bleachers
there.
It's going to be a venue for something. I'm not sure what, but discus or something. I don't know.
Speculation. Pure speculation.
Yeah. And then we walked through like kind of the courtyard of the Louvre, and then that was our walk. I mean, several miles to do all that, but it was nice to be there. We had dinner on Saint Louis Island, which is the one in the Seine next to Notre Dame, and we walked around there a little bit.
Oh, we got to see Notre Dame, which was interesting to see the renovation that they're doing there, and there were lots of pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the progress that's been made. It was interesting to see.
According to the internet, they're going to open it, was it like this winter?
Something like that.
Yeah, they think they're going to be done, so that's impressive.
Yep.
And then we went back and we stayed at the Citizen M, which
love Citizen M.
We
talked about that before, right?
Yeah, on the San Francisco episode. If you're curious about Citizen M hotels,
my favorite hotel.
Go back to San Francisco. One thing I want to talk about, if you're going to Paris and you're planning on getting around on the metro system there, you can buy a ticket on your phone and use that as through like your wallet to get around. The app needed the most updated version of the OS. And so we landed in Paris and Chris couldn't get that to work on his phone because it hadn't been updated.
Yeah, which I think my phone was like one version behind. It's not like I haven't updated it in years or anything like that. So it was really weird that it required like the most recent version, which has only been out for, I don't know, a few weeks or something like that. Like,
so just something to be aware of if you're going to Paris, or it's probably a good idea before you do any sort of travel, if you're going to be downloading apps or using, a card in your wallet, just to have the most updated version of your operating system.
But it was really easy and relatively inexpensive to take the train from Charles de Gaulle and to get to the city center that way. It worked out well.
Yeah, it was very convenient the way they have a metro station right in the airport, really.
Looking at you, New York, like, what's wrong with you that you can't get between your airports easily? Like, ridiculous. Sorry. I have strong feelings about that. It's just ridiculous.
So, yeah, we didn't do a ton in Paris, but we saw a lot. When we originally had this layover, we were planning on going to the Musée d'Orsay, but this layover was on a Monday and they're closed.
Closed Mondays.
And then we were going to do a free walking tour, but I realized that with the time that our plane was landing, checking into the hotel, dropping off our bags, all that was cutting it kind of close. And I don't know if we would have made it. So it was probably good that we canceled and just kind of did our own little free walking tour.
Mm-hmm. It was narrated by a guy who didn't really know what he was talking about. Which was me. It was like, that's a thing, I think.
This here is scaffolding. I think it's for the Olympics.
Yeah, but I chose the right route, I think. It was just long. Yeah.
We were there, I think, the day of or the day after they hung the Olympic rings on the Eiffel Tower. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure there are a lot of mixed feelings about that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you have plans to visit Paris this summer, just be prepared for scaffolding.
Yeah.
Hopefully you like scaffolding and not, the iconic Paris views. So yeah, that was our short little time in Paris. And be sure to come back next week for the next episode when we start talking about Italy. And I think specifically on my plan for next episode is Sicily and then Naples.
That's all for today's episode of Go, See, Do, Explore. Thank you for joining us and sharing in the wonder of travel.
Keep the spirit of today's adventure alive by checking out our blog at goseedoexplore.com for even more travel inspiration.
Don't forget to rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps fellow travelers find us and join our community.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep traveling by any means necessary.
I'm Christopher.
And I'm Ashleigh, bidding you farewell and happy exploring.